Well, there's something going on behind the scenes. I wish I could explain it. I wish I knew it better myself.
It's just sort of like dissecting, like cutting up a block of cheese.
Something unimaginable has just been uncovered inside Eustace Conway's secluded workshop, deep within the Blue Ridge Mountains. For years, this rustic, hidden sanctuary has been where the mountain man forged his tools, crafted his legends, and embraced his solitude. But what investigators stumbled upon behind those weathered wooden doors has shaken even his most devoted followers. Could this discovery change everything we thought we knew about Eustace Conway? Keep watching, because what lies beyond those walls will leave you speechless. For weeks leading up to filming, Eustace had become strangely distant. The man, renowned for his mastery of the wilderness, seemed to carry a burden no one could see. He was always calm, always composed, until now. During interviews, his eyes would often dart nervously toward the woods, as if he heard something the rest of us couldn't. The crew initially chalked it up to nerves. Opening his private space to outsiders was no small thing for a man like Eustace. But soon, his unease became undeniable. He began to wander into the woods before dawn, walking the narrow path to his workshop with no guide or lamp, relying solely on instinct. Locals spoke of how he knew the way by heart, how he moved through the trees like someone following a path older than reason. Whispers floated through the community. Some believed the workshop wasn't just a place of work, but a part of him, holding secrets he wasn't ready to release. The workshop sat hidden 200 yards from his cabin, surrounded by an ancient grove of hemlocks. Even in daylight, the trees cast the ground beneath them in a perpetual shadow. The building was simple: logs stacked in a perfect formation, a moss-covered roof, a single wooden door, and a small shuttered window. Nature pressed in from all sides, as though it wanted to reclaim the place entirely. To an outsider, it might have seemed like an abandoned relic, but to Eustace, it was sacred ground. For over 2 decades, that door had remained closed to everyone but him. His cabin, his barns, and his forge were open to visitors. But the workshop was off-limits. When asked about it, Eustace would fall silent or deflect the conversation. Those close to him knew better than to press. The workshop was where his solitude thrived, where his innermost secrets lay. So when the film crew was finally granted permission to enter, an air of unease settled over everyone. The morning they were scheduled to head out, Eustace had vanished. The crew searched the woods for hours, calling his name, growing more anxious with each passing minute. And then, almost as if he had materialized out of thin air, he appeared, silent, pale, and distant. "I've been here the whole time," he muttered, though no one had seen him arrive. They followed him down the narrow, shadowed path, the forest unnervingly still. Even the birds had gone silent. What should have been a short walk stretched on endlessly.
Planned, executed, well achieved. Another way you control people is by the food.
That we have a whole nother project lined up right here at the Sea Eagle, working on the boat lift.
Glad we got it done. Now you're ready for the
Short walk stretched on endlessly with no one daring to speak. When they reached the workshop, Eustace hesitated before the door. The handle resisted his touch, the hinges groaning in protest as the door slowly creaked open. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of sap, dust, and aged timber. At first glance, the space seemed like any other workshop. Tools neatly arranged, ropes coiled, and piles of wood stacked high in the corners. But as their eyes adjusted to the dim light, the true nature of the room began to reveal itself. The walls were covered in faces. Dozens, perhaps hundreds, were carved directly into the wood, each one unique. Some looked peaceful, others mournful, and a few were so lifelike they seemed almost real. One cameraman whispered that the faces seemed to shift as the light flickered, their wooden eyes following their every movement. It was then that someone remembered a story told by one of Eustace's former apprentices. He had said Eustace often worked through the night, muttering to himself about the connection between form and spirit. The same apprentice once saw him dismantling an old clock, binding its metal gears with tree sap and leather, claiming that time itself belonged to the forest. Most had dismissed it as folklore. But standing there, surrounded by those carved faces, no one dared to laugh. Eustace didn't explain the carvings. The man who had always spoken of living in harmony with nature now stood before his own creations, motionless, unsure whether they still belonged to him or he to them. The workshop was no longer just a place of craftsmanship. It felt alive, as though it held the essence of everything Eustace had endured in his solitude. To the crew, it was mesmerizing, terrifying. In that suffocating air, it became clear. They weren't merely witnessing art. They were standing in the heart of a mystery, one that perhaps was never meant to be uncovered. But there was more. Something behind the door they hadn't opened. Something that seemed to breathe with the room itself. As thunder cracked through the Blue Ridge sky, rattling the timbers of the workshop, the crew sensed a strange energy in the air, as if the storm had been drawn toward them by some unseen force. Even the cameras seemed to hum with attention. Eustace, ever the quiet observer, saw the crew's unease. His usually serene face was tight, his brow slick with sweat despite the cool air. For decades, he had kept this space as both a sanctuary and a burden, guarding it from the outside world. And now, for reasons he couldn't fully explain, he had let strangers inside. Finally, with a low, cautious voice, he spoke. "I see everyone looking at that door. You want to see what's inside?" The silence answered him. He pushed the door open, and the hinges screamed in protest, the sound echoing through the rafters. A cold draft filled the room, carrying with it an unsettling scent. Earth, dust, and something metallic. The room inside seemed alive, its walls steeped in secrets. Animal skulls hung in ritualistic patterns, their hollow eyes reflecting the brief lightning glare. Dried plants clung stubbornly to the rafters, their vibrant colors faded by time. Scattered across the floor were tools, blades, and instruments carved with such meticulous care they defied recognition. Each object seemed purposeful, yet their true meaning remained a mystery, pressing down on the crew with a sense of something far older and stranger than anything they could understand. The more they explored, the more the room seemed to shift around them. The lightning outside illuminated previously unnoticed corners, and for a moment, the shadows themselves seemed alive. One crew member noticed something beneath the roof, hidden by vines. "Look," he whispered, and without waiting for permission, the crew pulled away the plants, revealing something intricate.
Nature overlooked by science. Others speculated darker possibilities.
100+ years old, you know, it really makes me happy to see this thing working like it is.
I figure it's better to invest one time.
Basically, one word to kind of cover what...
Intricately woven from wood, bone, and stone. An object that defied explanation. Was it a map? A machine? No one could agree. Eustace remained calm, saying only that it was work, leaving the crew to wrestle with an unease they couldn't explain. The air felt wrong. Summer heat should have filled the forest, but inside the workshop, a coldness seeped from the walls. Some crew members shivered uncontrollably. Others felt as if they were being watched, though no one else was there. As the crew continued to examine the strange tools and objects, they discovered a shelf filled with hand-bound journals. The writing inside was meticulous, shifting between English and an unknown script. Eustace refused to let them examine the pages, but glimpses revealed star charts, sketches of rare plants, and diagrams mapping unseen forces that seemed to bind the space. Nearby, jars and containers held powders, liquids, and dried materials, some shimmering, others shifting between transparency and opacity. Some even appeared to multiply within their own confines. Cryptic labels and wax seals hinted at secrets meant to stay hidden. Every new discovery added another layer to the enigma. This workshop was no longer just a workspace. It was a living, breathing puzzle where the natural and unnatural coexisted, and the laws the crew understood no longer applied. Eustace's sanctuary had become a labyrinth of mysteries, and the crew felt as though they were being drawn deeper into something they weren't meant to understand. The crew soon discovered that Eustace had been recording the sounds of the mountain itself. Not just birds or wind, but the voices of life when no one was listening. Every element of the forest, he claimed, had a voice, a presence, a memory. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, unsure if they were dealing with a man on the edge of reason. When one crew member asked to hear a recording, Eustace hesitated. Finally, he fed a tape into an old player. The sound started out deceptively natural, wind through the trees, but soon warped into something far more bizarre. Low, shifting murmurs intertwined with harmonics that seemed almost alive. A faint call and response echoed in frequencies beyond human hearing. Some of the crew crouched, clutching their jaws in pain as their teeth throbbed. Others blinked frantically, their vision blurring, their stomachs twisting. Even the air seemed to vibrate. Eustace stood calm, knowing that his work had been understood without explanation. The recording ended, leaving only silence. Oppressive, thick, and heavier than the storm outside. Then, the crew noticed something on the wall near the door. A date, 3 weeks in the future, was carved into the wood. Beneath it, a single word: completion. The urgency in Eustace's movements was palpable as he ushered the crew out, insisting they had seen enough. But the room itself seemed to come alive behind them, objects shifting back into place, shadows stretching unnaturally. Days later, the crew was haunted by dreams of warped forests, of trees growing the wrong way, and of paths twisting in impossible directions. Locals reported strange occurrences, animals gathering in abnormal numbers, plants blooming out of season, and lights flickering through the trees where no human could reach. The mountain itself seemed to pulse with a force that extended beyond the walls of Eustace's workshop. The recordings, the jars, the strange carvings, they all hinted at patterns, at forces the human mind could only sense but never fully comprehend. Weeks later, as the crew returned to review their footage, they were struck by strange occurrences in the footage itself. Shadows flitted in corners where no one was standing, and a figure appeared behind Eustace for a brief instant before vanishing. And still, the workshop remains a riddle, a mystery that only deepens with time. What had Eustace unleashed in that moss-covered building? And what was meant to be completed on that marked date? The story is far from over. Stay tuned, because some secrets are too profound to remain hidden forever.